Hello and welcome to today's broadcast. I'm Davina and I'm talking about Susan Sarandon being a colossal B word and saboteur who encouraged and invited people to follow her lead when she said that she wasn't sure if she would be able to bring herself to vote for Hillary Clinton because it was going to be Donald Trump was going to, his election would bring about the revolution straight away. Somebody who prioritized her ideology as a far left-leaning person over actual humans who would have a very negative outcome under the presidency of a white supremacist who employed tried and tested fascist tactics of conflating patriotism with loyalty to him and his promotion of America First style slogans that are essentially empty and meaningless because Trump certainly didn't prioritize America. America was last under his pandemicidal reign. And we are recently learning through the publication of a book by his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, that Trump had tested positive for COVID on September 26, 2020, and that he chose 3 days later to attend the first presidential debate, and that his family, having been informed by Mark Meadows, who told Trump's inner circle to treat him as if he was contagious. Hello, Molly. So they knew he was contagious. They attended the debate maskless. They violated the mask protocol. The debate was being hosted by the Cleveland Clinic, and they also circumvented the requirement for getting a rapid test before attending the debate as well. So Trump managed to avoid being tested, and we yelled on stage. It's really a miracle he didn't infect Biden at that debate, and that his positioned family members, who were also quite possibly COVID positive at that stage, we don't know, didn't, but who we do know at least that they violated the mask protocol of that event. It's a miracle that they didn't manage to infect the candidate for the presidency, Joe Biden, the ultimately successful then presidential candidate, Joe Biden. So we've got Christopher's here. Hello, Christopher, Peter, Parker, and Molly. Nice to see all of you. So what I have up on screen is Republican Representative Jim Jordan tweeting 8 hours ago that real America is done with COVID-19. The only people who don't understand that are Fauci and Biden. Now, of course, that's a very white supremacist thing to say. It's very, very common for white supremacists to view themselves as real Americans, to promote a view of themselves as real Americans. People who are following the data will know that it's the people who are willfully refusing to get vaccinated at this stage. If you group them by political orientation, they are predominantly Republican. So 90% of people affiliated with the Democratic Party are now vaccinated. And the holdouts are predominantly from the Republican Party. And if you look at Trump's behavior in refusing to get a test and his family in refusing to wear a mask for that first presidential debate, you'll see that they've modeled that behavior for the American public. They've modeled treating COVID as if it was a hoax, allowing Donald Trump to burnish his political strategy of selling himself as the anti-establishment candidate. Republicans always run as anti-establishments candidates since the establishment voted for the Civil Rights Act. Well, that Lyndon LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and gave African Americans the right to vote and other civil rights progressive steps So since that time, since the signing of the Civil Rights Act by LBJ, white America has not voted in a majority sense for any Democratic candidate. So that's the Southern strategy of cater to races that the Republican Party has been able to capitalize on for decades. So whenever Republicans screw up America badly enough, then you have some white voters who can be successfully peeled away from the Republican Party enough to deliver a victory to a Democratic candidate. But if they haven't done anything too terrible, then they're frequently rewarded with the reins of public office, which is a mistake because Trump very overtly threw America under the bus. And if America didn't have such a pronounced conservative, deceitful media bubble that lied to people about what has happened and what continues to happen, then more people would know that. So as it is, we have to rely on the news getting through to some white people that, look, Republicans mess things up and they will do so again if you give them the chance. And the repercussions of Republican activity is still harming people across the United States and indeed the world. I'm speaking of a lot of vaccine resistance, which is fueled by disinformation, which was promoted from the most high-profile public platform in the world, which was to say the office of the presidency of the United States in 2020. Trump used that office to disparage scientists, to disparage the value of wearing masks, and to disparage the value of taking COVID seriously and inconveniencing ourselves to participate in any collective mitigation strategies against or to reduce the impact of COVID. Hey, Phil's here as well. Hello, Phil. So we have a few people on Twitch and Christopher on YouTube. Nice to see you all. Molly notes that gerrymandering and purging of voter rolls helps Republicans counteract the fact that there's more Democratic voters than Republican voters. It's just Republicans often govern red states so poorly that it drives out blue voters who don't sustain themselves intellectually by affiliating with the virtues of or the central tenets of Republican Party ideology. They don't get excited about potentially overturning Roe v. Wade. They don't get excited about denigrating social services, and they don't get excited by people who promise to reduce public expenditure and reduce government and make government so small you could drown it in a bathtub, as was it Grover Norquist said about government. And in fact, Reagan said a very damaging thing that the echoes of which are still felt. He said that the most terrifying phrase you can hear is, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So we see the opposite of that now, in that the government is helping. The Democratic-led federal government has already passed legislation to deliver infrastructure and help, has already cut child poverty in the United States in half, has already delivered a lot of measurable improvements to the quality of life of most Americans, and will deliver more if the two sellout Democratic senators, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, manage to put aside their corrupt instincts for a few minutes to actually allow this bill to pass with a simple majority vote in the Senate. Now, how can it do that? Through the budget reconciliation, because that's the one way you can avoid the consequences of the filibuster, which is not part of America's Constitution, but which is essentially a tool for allowing erased vetoes to occur for legislation that would help the American people. So how are we going for time? Let's see, there might be some videos that I would like to play you all. But yes, so Ron Johnson, part of that Republican push to downplay COVID in order to feed into their anti-establishment credentials. So they want to say, yes, all those downers in the Democratic Party want you to lock down, want you to wear masks, want to inconvenience you, and we're done with that inconvenience. Sure, Democrats might claim that you are helping others, that you're protecting the vulnerable, little kids with asthma, people over 65, the millions of Americans with some form of pre-existing health condition, because a lot of people have something. A lot of people can tick one of those boxes, and there are people who don't even anticipate being vulnerable to COVID, but who will lose out if Republicans continue to so heavily sabotage the American collective response to the pandemic, so that there can be this terrible game of Russian roulette played. Because it's not just the people who are unvaccinated that suffer. The higher the rate of unvaccinated people, the more breakthrough cases that occur. This is just science. The more the disease is circulating, the more that 5% of the higher in real numbers, that 5% of vaccinated people who will still get COVID, the higher that number will be. It's just maths. If you say the vaccine's 95% effective, and that's true, so that out of 100 slices of pizza, 5 slices of pizza are going to run into trouble. But if you expand that and you perpetuate that pandemic, those 5 slices out of every 100 slices of pizza, if you times the number of pizzas you order by 1,000, then that 5 slices becomes significantly more. And that's why I want to put a shout out for anybody who's mathematically or statistically inclined. I'm not terrible at statistics or maths, but it's not my forte, and I can try and make it my forte, but I'd love it if there was someone out there going, I'm too shy to do what she does and turn on a microphone and talk to a camera, but I want to help make the case with numbers for a whole bunch of things, because there's so much data out there that would be very persuasive if people made more of an effort to showcase it for the general public. I'm not talking about convincing Trump voters, although I also think it's incumbent on white people of conscience to plow on through that social awkwardness and to challenge the Trumpy people around you, and to challenge the fence sitters around you as well, to say, look at this good thing that the Biden administration is doing, because the mainstream media is very scandal driven. And we can speculate about their motives and say, yes, scandal is better for ratings. We can also speculate that a lot of the mainstream media sources have wealthy owners who would benefit if Republicans got back in power, and who anticipate potentially being harmed by Democratic policies of increasing taxes on the wealthy in order to pay for important pro-social programs. So the wealthy owners of all of the mainstream news stations may be incentivized to continue to focus on scandal and say, we're just doing this in good faith, we're reporting on breaking news, but be completely derelict in their duty to inform the public about important matters. And some of those important matters include how the Biden administration is being congratulated by CEOs for addressing the supply chain holdups and developing policies to smooth through some of those supply chain blockages so that the American economy stays on course and continues to have very high employment, to have an unemployment rate that's the lowest it's been since 1969. So there's a lot of good that the Biden administration is doing that's not getting reported on by the mainstream media. They're not informing people what's in the Build Better Act, for example. They just report on what people believe, as if that's valid all in and of itself, without any duty of care to help people stay well informed about the contents of that proposed bill. All right. So, yes, for years I have tried to see myself as someone modeling what we need to do as individuals to fill in the gaps left in the fourth estate by an overabundance of both sidesism and allowing Republicans to control the narrative, allowing basically hiding behind a perception of perceived cultural dominance by the left to then cater to Republican narratives on the economy that hide over the fact that Republican presidents have all been or have overseen 10 out of the last 11 recessions. So I think there was a recession under Jimmy Carter, a Democratic president. But apart from that, 10 out of the last 11 recessions have occurred, have been instigated, have occurred, have begun under the guidance of a Republican president. So that's a big economic truth, that Democratic presidents are better for the economy, and that's been successfully concealed from the public, from most of the public, by the mainstream media's failure to report on that pattern of events. So yes, I'm going to try and help address that imbalance and that pandering to Republican interests. Republicans are essentially a one-party, aspirationally authoritarian party that tried to consolidate power under Trump. A lot of Republican politicians tried to assist Trump in his endeavor to overthrow the results of the election, i.e., to validate his approach, as he needed a few different components for people to reject the certified votes of 7 different states. He needed people to object and to delay the certification of Biden's win on the 6th of January. He needed a lot of support from senators and House of Representatives officials to delay proceedings, and as well as needing his foot soldiers of enraged, deluded Trump rioters to attack the Capitol and delay proceedings in that way as well. And what's often forgotten is that if Nancy Pelosi hadn't pushed ahead with the certification of the election on that day, there would have been more space for Trump to proceed with part 2 of the insurrection plot. Well, thank you. Christopher says you've done an amazing job understanding the US political climate and then laying it out so all may understand. Thank you, Christopher. Bless your heart for your encouragement. I mean that sincerely, not in a southern swear word kind of way. I do have to leave now, but I'd like to thank you all for listening and hope to talk to you again soon. Fingers crossed tomorrow. Take care all, and let's stay vigilant. I'm going to support Stacey Abrams and her organization called Fair Fight Action, if you want to look it up, because she is actively working to counteract the pernicious effect of Republican voter suppression. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye, Molly and Peter and Phil and Dave and Christopher. Bye.